Hi, my name is Mark Breton. I'm the Operations Section Chief for CAL Fire Incident Management Team 3, and we're here at the CZU Lightning Complex. I'm going to go around the fire, explain what we've done and what we're planning to do in our upcoming operation for today, Wednesday. So starting at the top in our north zone, fire being in the north south zone in the north, we've had a lot of progress in Division Golf and Kilo. You'll notice a black line on the map that indicates that we have full control of that area. We're in a mop-up and patrol phase, which means we have fewer resources needed there because the fire has gone down to our control line. It's essentially out, and we're just mopping up any hot spots that there may be. Very critical piece of line because with the changing wind directions that we've been experiencing throughout this fire and that we're going to experience, that we were concerned that if we hadn't that secured, it could burn up and into Santa Clara County, which puts us into a whole nother set of issues. So very important that we got that buttoned up. We're doing a good job. The folks have done a good job. That's really looking clean, and we're going to have a continued patrol to make sure anything that's warm in there, any smokes are done and over with. Moving down to the other part of the fire in Division Echo, Mateo-Santa Park, we do have fire creeping down into that area, and we're looking at letting it get down to a creek base. That brings it down to a more favorable area for us to work, to put our crews in versus up on the side of the hill where we're not quite as effective in putting our control line in. So that's the idea, is to let that burn down to the creek. It's a very slow controlled burn that way. It's not doing any significant damage to any of the vegetation there, the trees and so forth. And in actuality, in the long run, it actually is going to be beneficial to eliminate that very hazardous fuel condition in there for any future fires and for the health of that forest. So it's actually doing a good thing up there. As we continue to move down the coast, we're continuing to construct a line from the black line here further up towards Butano. We have some dozers working in there to help put our control line in, and again, we're letting that creep down. We may end up helping it with a little minor burn operation. That'll eliminate that fire, and then we'll have good control of that. We're continuing down the coast. You see more of the black line where actually fire self-mitigated, burned into some lighter fuels, and it actually self-extinguished. And so we'll have control lines around that to make sure that's completely buttoned up. The community of Davenport, lines around that. We're looking at getting some of the infrastructure up and running, getting the power re-energized. We have PG&E doing a lot of work on the Highway 1 corridor, along with Caltrans to make sure the roads are clear and secured. And all the other infrastructure, phone, cable, everything like that. They're working diligently for the utility companies to get that restored and hopefully get those folks back into that community and all the other communities and the homes along the highway corridor all the way down to Davenport, all the way up into the communities of Pescadero, La Honda. We're looking at starting to discuss repopulation of that. So we could see some good news as far as repopulation in the very near future. On the south side of the fire, again, we have our secondary control line. Our primary control line is holding as we've had it designed. We continue to mop up, making sure hot spots are taken care of. This is looking really secure. So the communities of Santa Cruz and the UC campus are in really good shape. We are going to be experiencing a change in our weather coming this weekend, where we're going to see more of a northerly or northwest push of the wind, which brings it in this direction. Anytime we have any sort of wind change, no matter what, on any part of the fire, it gives us some concerns because of a lot of the open control lines. So when we see any change or anticipate any change, we make sure that those areas are bolstered up with resources, or we have good control lines in place. So for the coming weather coming this weekend, where it's going to get warmer, it's going to get drier, we are going to have some more wind from the north. This would have been a concern, but the fact that we have the control lines in now and we have some of the mitigation of the fire and the mop-up, we're feeling really good. And what we'll do is, with that wind, it'll actually give us what we call a wind test. We puts wind onto the uncontrolled line or line that may be a little hot, and once we get wind on it, if it's secured and it stays secured, then that's like almost 100% confidence at that point that our line is going to hold, it's going to be secured, because if it can withstand that wind, we're golden. Moving up the Highway 9 corridor, it's always been a challenge throughout. Again, like we've been saying, it's got some really steep terrain in there. It's got a heavy fuel loading. It's just not a typical bit of terrain and topography that we have a lot of success with, or that we traditionally put our control lines into, so we have to adjust our strategy and tactics. We've done that, and we've been able to put in line around a lot of the community of Felton, and did some minor burn operations around that, around the quarry, if you're familiar with that area, and that's been really good because that secured a good portion of it. Today, we are going to do a burn operation just on the other side of Felton Empire Grade Road, and we've had a line constructed in there. We've prepared that line for a burn operation. We've seen the fire chunking its way down slowly, and what the idea with that operation is take that control line and make it even wider to eliminate that fuel between the line and the oncoming fire by doing a very controlled, meticulous burn in that operation. We're going to eliminate that fuel, that hazardous fuel. It's not going to go and destroy those trees in there. It's actually going to, again, like we've done in the north, be very healthy for that forest. It's going to get rid of those that hazardous fuels that have built up over time. And so not only is it going to help us with the firefight, but down the road and for years to come, it's going to create a protective barrier for the communities and provide for a healthy forest. This will continue on and end just below Ben Lomond, and then we are continuing to construct line as we have been through over the days as we've gotten resources, and we're kind of leapfrogging up among the communities with that line, continuing to improve that line. The fire again continuing to creep down throughout, and once we get more resources, which we have been getting indications that we're going to be getting more of our Type 1 hand crews. And these Type 1 hand crews, this is their specialty. This is what they do. This is what they're designed to do. And they'll go in and put in these lines. So they're highly qualified, highly experienced hand crews that do this kind of work. And we'll be able to put that line in and then follow up as needed, do some burn operations as needed. Some of it, our line's just going to be able to hold. We won't have to do any of that. The challenge, again, because of all the homes that are scattered throughout there and nestled into some of these drainages, it just takes time, takes diligence, takes a lot of extra work so that we can put that line in. And that's what we're going to do throughout. Highway 236 corridor, we have Caltrans working today, and they're opening up that corridor so we can get deeper into the burn there, as well as through some of the other roads within the Bonnie Doon area, so that we can get deeper within those affected areas, because there's a lot of down trees, power poles, power lines. So once we can get the trees cleared, we have the utilities companies in right behind us, clearing their power poles, any down lines. And then that gives us access to the other areas to start mopping that up and control any fire around those homes that may still exist. For the most part in Bonnie Doon area, we've been actively working among those homes throughout the past few days. A lot of success taking care of those hot spots, assessing damage with our damage inspection teams. And so that's starting to get on its feet. The Sheriff's Department has done a fantastic job, along with their allied law enforcement partners, of securing that area from people that should not be in that evacuated area. That's a tremendous help for us, because that becomes a distraction. We have people there that should not be there, and takes away from our efforts. So the fact that issue is eliminated, now we can concentrate on that. We can put a full force of our resources to play and start getting that community back in service, so that we can eventually repopulate that. Because as soon as we make it safe, we bring the utility companies in right on our heels. They can start doing their work so we can re-energize the power, the water, all those necessities for folks, so that when we repopulate, they have everything they need to be comfortable about getting back in and resuming their lives. So a lot of efforts going on simultaneously to render these areas safe. So that's pretty much what we're looking at today, our objectives today. The weather's looking like it's going to cooperate. We've had a set of really good days that have mitigated the intensity of the fire, and that also helps prepare us for the oncoming fire this weekend, where the weather's going to dry out, the temperature's going to come up. We're going to have a little bit more wind, and we'll see a little bit of intensity, but nothing like we've seen over the past week. So it's just the nature of just still having some active fire within these areas. So for our air program, we've had a lot of success this past week. The air's cleared up. We haven't had the smoke, the fog, and that sort of thing. So usually we're starting to fly around 11 o'clock. The window opens up for us, and we're able to fly all the way to what we call aircraft cutoff. Our aircraft can only fly during the daytime and in certain visibility conditions. So when we had the smoke, we had poor visibility conditions. It's not safe for the aircraft to fly. And even with instrumentation, it's just not safe. On top of it, with the smoke, they can't see where they're dropping their water or their retardant if they're an air tanker dropping retardant. So the effectiveness of the operation, even if they did fly, would be nil. So we look for the clear air, we utilize that to our advantage, so that way it's safe for the aircraft to fly and it's effective when we're doing the drops of the water or the retardant. The past few days we've been able to fly a lot. What we've flown is predominantly helicopters and their water dropping capabilities. So yesterday we've flown and we dropped about 256,000 gallons of water just yesterday alone. We timed out the aircraft. Timing out means we fly it to its maximum amount that we're allowed by regulations and law to fly an aircraft. So we maximize the aircraft and its usage. We have 6 water dropping helicopters assigned to this incident, and we're using every bit of those helicopters at every minute that they can drop, they are dropping. And so $256,000 gallons yesterday. The day before we were around 200,000. So every day they're more and more productive. We have more targets of opportunity. So with the clear air, so we're able to get in there, take care of that. And that's helping the ground crews because it's a joint effort. The aircraft alone don't put out the fire. The troops on the ground have a little bit more difficult time when they're doing it without the aircraft. Together, it's a force multiplier, and they're very successful at their operations. You're not seeing the fixed wing air tankers dropping retardant. We're at a situation where it's not the best tool for the job. The retardant is just that. It slows the advancement of the fire. A lot of people think that it actually puts out fire. It doesn't. It may knock down and suppress it to a point, but it only slows a progress of the fire. So typically when we have a fire and we have the right topography, the right fuels, they'll lay line from those tankers of that retardant and it slows it. And then what the key point is, we follow up with ground resources, whether it be fire engines, bulldozers, hand crews, and put actual line and the boots on the ground to actually suppress the fire. That's how that works. What's great about helicopters is drop water, they actually do suppress some fire. So again, they work in conjunction with their ground forces. They knock down the heat and so forth. That lets our folks get in there on the ground, take care of that. So that's kind of the difference between our air tankers and why you're not seeing those. Also, the air tankers, there are fewer of those than we have availability of helicopters, so it's a limited resource. And again, the fuels that we're working in, again, we're dealing with some very thick canopies of trees, and when we use the air tankers, that retardant doesn't always penetrate through that canopy. Whereas when you have a helicopter, it's a pinpoint drop from the buckets or the tanks they have, and it's able to push through the canopy of the trees, get down to the ground where the fire typically is typically on the ground and not in the canopy of the trees. So that's why with the air tankers, they're not always as effective because they can't get through the canopy of the trees. When you're dealing with a fire that's more in brush or definitely in grass, very effective because they don't have to, they can either push through the canopy of the brush, definitely onto the grass, and it's a thicker slurry of the retardant, slows the fire growth, like I said. So much more effective in that, not as effective in this. And we did use them early on, good application, but now our best is with those helicopters. So you'll see those flying if you're in the area. We're going to be flying them as much as we possibly can, as long as it's safe, and we'll continue to use that effort. But we're looking at, as some of the other fires are slowing down, we will see an influx of more of those helicopters. We are in line for those. Like I said, the fires are prioritized, and the higher priority fires get the stuff as it gets available. We are a higher priority, so I would anticipate we'll see more of those helicopters as well as more ground forces in the coming days and help us suppress this fire. Thank you.